Thank you so much to everyone for being here today. I think most of you know me, but my name is Ariana Rashke, and I'm the program director for CAZCA. I'm joined here today by Jenny Davis, who's our Ecoflora and CAZCA engagement coordinator, as well as Alana Turner, who is Desert Botanical Gardens executive assistant. And we also have Terry Haynes here with us, who's our dedicated CAZCA volunteer. And she's going to be helping us with a couple of things today. So thank you so much to all of the team helping make this event a reality. I'm sure all of you have had experience with these online events and know that they're quite nerve-wracking at times. So really, really grateful to the team here and also for everyone speaking today. I think it's going to be a really exciting event. All right, so in terms of our agenda today, basically just want to walk you guys through the plan. As I mentioned, we'll be joined by a lot of different people who will be speaking from among the partners, but also a few folks from outside of CAZCA. But our main objective today is to keep all of you updated on CAZCA's key work. I know a lot of you are involved in different projects, but there's so much going on the ground. It's a great time to reconnect with all of you and let you know what tools are out there that CAZCA has been working on. So us, the backbone team, as well as our partners, tons of stuff going on. But we're also going to save some space today for a what we're calling a collaborative conservation panel. We have experts from within CAZCA and from outside of the Alliance here to talk about their experience with collaborative conservation and what key takeaways you all might have. And it'll be a great time for questions and answers as well. We'll have a break and then we'll go into 3 different discussion groups. So it's going to be packed. I think the time will fly and you guys will all be like, oh my gosh, it's 12:30, let's go. All right, so to get us started today, though, we're going to talk a little bit of some strategic work that we're doing this year. And I'm hoping to hand off at this point to Melanie from the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy. Melanie, if you are here, unmute yourself and introduce yourself. Hopefully you're here.
Ariana, this is Dan. If Melanie's not on, I'll do it.
Okay, great. So it does seem like we should probably move. Dan, would you mind?
No.
All right. I will be piloting the PowerPoint, so just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, well, we're going to take advantage of the meeting to get your feedback about CAZCA and what it's doing today and what you would find useful for it to do for you in the future. Now, the reason we're doing this is that CAZCA has now been in existence, amazingly, for about 10 years. And an enormous amount has been accomplished. Many of you were involved in creating the regional open space strategy work, which we're very proud of. But that strategy was developed with input from many of you almost 5 years ago. And we have done a lot of work on many of the objectives in the strategy. But as you all know, and as today's meeting illustrates, the world has changed. So we really want to hear from you about what your priorities are now and what you would want and need from CAZCA, from a regional organization in the future to support, the things that you're concerned about and that you're working on today. So we'd like to get input from you during the meeting, and Ariana and Jenny have set up a Jamboard, which they will explain to you in a moment. In addition to the feedback from you today at the meeting, a group of us are going to do follow-up interviews with a pretty substantial group of partners and other people who have perspective on regional conservation needs. And our goal is to find out what you want and need from a regional organization going forward, and turn that into a proposal describing what CAZCA should do to support your work in the future. We also want to understand what resources CAZCA will need in order to do what you want. And then we will present that to the CAZCA Steering Committee, which some of you are members of, and to the Desert Botanical Garden, of course, as the convening organization. And then we will also, after we've gotten feedback, present it to all the partners. So we just have a few questions for you today, but please think about these things and take advantage of the time during the meeting to give us your responses on the Jamboard. First, what are the highest priority goals and objectives of your organization now, recognizing they may be different than what they were even a few years ago? Second, how do your current high priority goals relate to the ROS? And what we're looking for is the ROS still completely valid? Are there some tweaks that we should make in it to reflect your current needs and priorities and perspectives? We'd like you to help us understand that. And finally, reflecting on your highest priority goals and objectives, what could CAZCA provide or do to help you achieve those goals and objectives better, faster, or cheaper than you could do it on your own? Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Dan. And so what I'm going to do now is quickly try to show you all the Jamboard. We will be sharing this link in the chat, and Terry is here to help. So if you haven't used Jamboard before, Terry can help you navigate that. So can Jenny and I. We're not actually going to take time right now to do this. We'll take some time later in the agenda after our break to give you all a chance to go in. But I did just want to briefly explore the Jamboard since Dan has kind of introduced this initiative that we're working on. So I'll show you how to use it really quickly. This will remain open after the event. So if you do want to go back in at a later time and add some feedback, that would be great. And like I said, we will have time later today in the agenda for everyone to go in and add their feedback for us. But as a really quick walkthrough, let me just show you. I see people are hopping on, which is great. Jamboard is really easy to use if you haven't seen it before. I think a lot of us probably have at this point, but for anyone new to it, basically, there's a few key things. We have the different slides up here, and these will each have the question at the top of those 3 questions that we mentioned. And so you can explore those, you can flip through, but the most important thing for us is that we get your feedback on these little sticky notes to the questions, as many as you have time for today, or, again, we'll leave this open for a while. You can pick your color to be snazzy. You just type in whatever your feedback is, and then you click save. And that will pop up right here. You can make it bigger or smaller depending on how much text you have. And then these can all be moved around. So it's about as close as we can get to the old, Post-it note situation in the digital world. So it is quite fun, I think, and it's a really great way to get ideas from everybody because we really want to hear back from all of you on these things. So again, we will visit this in depth after the break. So we'll have some time to go in there. I see you all exploring at the moment, which is wonderful. So thank you again to Dan and Melanie for helping us work on this. And as was mentioned, we'll be doing some in-depth interviews with a few people as well. So we're really trying to get feedback from as many folks as we can through this Jamboard and our interview as well. So we're actually going to move along. We're a little bit ahead in the agenda, which is always great. I wanted to take some time today to give you all some updates on various CAZCA projects with a focus on tools that we think will be really helpful for you all. I think a lot of you will know of at least one or two of these projects because you're already involved, but there should also be a few new things or just good reminders about things that we've had sort of on the available for a while. So Jenny and I will be speaking, and then at the end of this section, Kara Jensen's actually going to come and speak about her project, Be Outdoors Arizona, and a big event calendar that they have. So, you know, that's not a CAZCA project, but it's something we want to elevate. So again, at the end of our updates here, she will give us a little walkthrough about what they're working on there. So this will be a bit of a whirlwind tour. I hope you all will bear with me on that. But we want to save room for the panel while also letting you all know about some cool stuff that we have going on. All right, so the first thing that I wanted to let you all know about, because this is actually quite new, Anya Quiros, before she moved on from CAZCA at the end of 2021, put together a really amazing new resource page on the CAZCA website. We had initially introduced the idea of a resource library in 2020 when we were exploring GIS Hub. And we've really built out those ideas into this page, thanks to all the hard work of Anya. She also had a former CAZCA volunteer, Lucas, who was helping her. So I want to give you guys a quick peek at what this page looks like to show you, you know, what the resources are, and to let you know there are ways to contribute to this resource page. So here it is on the CAZCA website. I believe Jenny will also be sharing that link in the chat, but you can always access it on our website here. And basically the way we designed it was that we have several different main portals that you can click into. A lot of the resources are organized by the ROS goals thematically, but we also have, you know, key resources that CAZCA has created. If you pop in here, you'll see publications. One thing I think is also really exciting is our media gallery. These are a lot of different things that you guys can feel free to download and use at any time. But another cool element of this that we really wanted to elevate is this partner portals. Obviously, it is very important to CAZCA that we aren't reinventing the wheel. And I know that a lot of you all have been building your own partner portals. Well, not as a partner portal, but you've been building information portals. So we wanted to really point people in that direction. So some examples of that are the AZ Geo Hub for spatial data, CAP-LTER. We've got AAEE, SciNet for floristic, and McDowell Sonoran Conservancy's invasive species clearinghouse, as well as some other partner portals. So I think what's really important about this tool is that people know it's here and that you can use it, but also if you let us know, hey, we've got a really cool portal that we would love to be included, please tell us. Or alternatively, if you've got lots of, you know, data reports that you think belong on a portal that a partner would be interested in, check this out. Let people know about your resources so we can start pulling this stuff together. And so there's places on this resource page for your various reports, and we would love to host them. We would love to point people in the direction of your portals. We really want this page to just be a resource for everybody, to start linking our information. In my past life before CAZCA, as a researcher, it was very hard to find that gray literature, the reports that we're all working on, and so much time and love goes into them. Part of the idea behind this is let's not lose that information. We've all got really great stuff to share. So again, please go in, explore, see what's there. Let us know what's missing. And we would love to, update this and make sure it's the best resource for all of you possible. So let us know any feedback that you have, but this is there. And we're really hoping it's something that you can delve into. And a huge thank you to Anya for all of her hard work designing this and really thoughtfully pulling it together. All right, so back to our whirlwind tour. I know a lot of you are involved with Desert Defenders, but I did want to give a quick update for everybody, and also for those who aren't familiar with the public invasive species map that we've been building. We'll have the link here. It'll be shared in the chat, but also, this will be recorded so you can refer to the link as well. But Desert Defenders is alive and well. We have a lot of different partners working on this project, leading this project, and building out this map. So if you do have the chance to go in and explore and you are new to it, you will basically be able to see this regional map with these little colored dots symbolizing points of various invasive plant species that have been located by our community scientists across the region. And, part of the idea behind this is to help us plan together on what to do about these species, how to manage them. Mary and Willie will talk a little bit more about what the working group has been doing. But there's also a ton of work among the partners with different leadership on, how do we prioritize this work? McDowell Sonoran Conservancy has been working really hard on that. And this group does meet to discuss, share information, and, pick each other's brains. So if you aren't yet involved in this project and you're interested in managing invasive species on a regional scale, let me know and I'd be happy to connect you with the rest of the group. This is, again, as all of CAZCA's projects, this is all collaborative. And a lot of different organizations are involved. Connected to Desert Defenders, I also want to let everybody know that there's a lot of different resources that we as a group have put together for the project, but which we are happy to share with anybody who wants to use them. So as some examples, and these can all be found in that CAZCA media library that I mentioned earlier. We do have a lot of different materials on the invasive plants themselves. So we have a one-pager that highlights the different species. This training workbook, we have more in-depth photos of the focal invasive species that we want to teach people about. And there's little spots for people to sketch out, make notes, and really explore how to identify these various plants. So this is a PDF that you can download and use. We do use it for our Desert Defenders training, but for folks that are wanting to learn more about these plants and learn how to identify them, I think it's a really nice resource. We also have things like our social media toolkit on wildfire. I've put up the Spanish version here as an example, but these are also things that you guys can feel free to, pull down and use. This is something that Anya worked really hard on, made beautiful designs and sort of formatted these so that they could be used in a variety of different social media platforms. So these are all resources that we would love for you guys to use. And so feel free to go in and do so. Again, that's in the CAZCA media library. And if you have any questions, you can also always feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to explore these things further and let you guys know what's out there. But these are meant to be shared and used by anybody. So I'm going to jump over to another one of our collaborative projects. I am realizing I did not put all the logos for the Desert Defenders folks, so I do apologize for that. But again, all of these are collaborative efforts and there are a lot of people at the table. So moving on though to the Sonoran Seed Collaborative. This is a project that we have been working on for a few years now. And our focus here is to essentially address this issue identified in the ROS, the lack of genetically appropriate native plant material for restoration in our region. So this project has built a garden at Tovry Castle. Some of you may have visited it, or we may have visited your garden. But the idea behind this was, let's start testing some of the production methods and gather some data and see what we find. And in conjunction with that, we've been harvesting seeds, and we have used them already for restoration efforts at Piestewa Peak, as well as Papago Park. But you know, our big focus now in this new year is to really start reaching out to more of the partners. We have chatted with many people so far, but we really want to get more of that conversation going. So we have an event coming up on April 5th that, of course, you all are invited to attend. Many of you here are also panelists and experts that'll be speaking at the event. Again, we will add this link into the chat so you could explore more and register if you are interested. But the point of the Sonoran Seed Summit is to not only learn from one another and from the panelists that we're bringing, but to start having a discussion about how do we take our individual efforts and really expand to address the needs of our region around native plant materials, because there's a lot of gardens that are being built out. You know, we visited Juanita's garden out at Maricopa County Parks and Rec. We also know of a garden at South Mountain. And so we want to start connecting our different efforts on this issue and, you know, talk through what the future could look like. So we do hope that you guys will be interested in joining us for this event and this discussion. We are planning an in-person, which is kind of exciting. It will be all outdoors, so that'll be nice. And we do hope to see you there. So moving on, I think many of you have heard in the previous All Partners or through outreach with this program, we also run something called Sonoran Insiders. This is a social media ambassadorship program. And the idea behind it is that we want to link up with really engaged influencers to elevate messages about responsible use, but also to elevate the work of our partners. So we've got some images here from pre-COVID times where we were able to bring out our influencers onto the land and learn about the work of our partners. And then to go back and talk and say, hey, these organizations are doing X, Y, Z. It's really cool. Here's how you can help. And so in terms of how you all could get involved or benefit from this program, there's a couple of ways to do that. If you want to highlight the work of your organization, we can basically chat about having an event where the insiders can come out, check out what you're doing, learn more about your work, and then we'll help you craft a brief where they can then go back and share out, you know, sort of curated information, but genuine information about what you're doing. And these are some stats on the outreach that we did in 2020. And it's pretty considerable. Almost 6 million people were reached through this program. And somewhere in my notes, I have numbers on how much that would have cost if we had tried to do that through advertising. But frankly, it wouldn't have been possible for the money that we have. So it's really cool. I think it's a great way also to build community, because these are really great folks that are already sort of engaged in that outdoor community, and they want to share these responsible messages. The other way that we're happy to see this project benefit you all is that we've basically designed this as a model. So if your organization wants, you know, their own ambassadors, their own community, we have reports set up so that you could essentially replicate this model. And we'd be happy to, you know, support you in that. So depending on how interested that you are in outreach like this, there's some different options, but we're really happy to, you know, organize either an event to elevate your work or share this model with you all, because we think it's been really cool, and it has been a great community builder with the public. So it's really fun. So moving on, I do want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the green print. I'm hoping you all know about this tool. It's a big part of answering some of the needs in the ROS that were outlined. And we've been maintaining this tool over time. We just updated all of the parcel data this year. And we've added some layers as well over time that I think are really cool. And we are actually this year going into a sort of assessment of the tool and thinking about its future. So if you do work closely with GIS stuff and you have thoughts about the green print and what it might look like in the future, let us know. But as some background on the tool, it was, really designed to support informed decision-making around natural resources and to make data available to folks that maybe don't have full access to GIS analysis. This came from partner data and analysis layers that were created through an iterative process with an expert advisory team. We are also currently working on a data portal where you will be able to download layers, approved layers for use in your own analysis. So I'm going to do a really quick tour for anyone unfamiliar with this tool. We'll add that link into the chat as well. Give me 1 second to switch over here. This will not be an in-depth tour. I just kind of want to show off to you all what this looks like. CAZCA does do trainings if you're interested in learning more about the tour or potentially using the tool, because there's a lot of different elements here that I can't explore in the next minute or so. But what you're seeing here is our study area. This is Maricopa County with associated HUC-10 watersheds. So this red line here. And I'm showcasing one of our layers that we created through what we call the conservation opportunity areas. So, you can go in, check out the layer, see what's going on. The tool will show you what everything means. So if you open a layer, you can see, okay, what does this visualization mean for me? And how can I potentially use it? If you're then interested in, where do these maps come from? What do they mean? You can pop over into the metadata and explore that. There are some analysis tools in here as well, which again, I unfortunately do not have the time to fully explore with everybody. But, you can query parcel data. As I mentioned, we just updated that this year. So the parcel data is up to date. You can do a project impact tool exploring the impact of a park in a certain area and getting demographic data on that. There are tons of different layers of data that you can explore, including those analysis layers that I mentioned that were created through the partnership. So this, I think, is a wonderful tool. Again, many of you have probably explored it before, but it's here. It's being updated. And there's really still a lot to come in here and, look through. So we do hope that if you haven't explored the green print in the past, that you will give it a look now and see what it might be able to support for you all, and to provide us with feedback as well. All right, and so finally, before I hand off to Jenny, I do want to talk about something that Terry Haynes and Jill Baker are helping us with. We are still trying to build our partner initiative database. This is something that, we did introduce to you all in 2020. We piloted a survey at that time, which turned out to maybe be a little too onerous for a lot of folks. So what we're doing now is, with the help of Terry and Jill, we have both an interview and sort of a research protocol now to learn more about the initiatives that you all are doing within your organizations that are related to the ROS. The idea behind this is that we would love to provide a database to all of you on what folks are doing in the region that you could organically search as needed. So just as an example, if I were to, want to start managing buffalo grass or fountain grass, I could go into this database and say, invasive species management, and then see which organizations are working on that and who I might contact to learn more about what they're doing. That way, you know, basically you have at your fingertips information on who's doing what and who you could collaborate with or get information from more easily and readily. And we really do want to provide that support. We think it would be a great sort of enhancement to the regional collaboration here, because obviously we're all kind of short on time. We don't want to recreate the wheel, and we have a lot of experts across organizations doing really great work. So if we could get this thing off the ground, it would be really wonderful. And so if you would like to help us gather this information and elevate the work of your organization, please let us know. But we will also be reaching out to you so that Terry and Jill can start investigating what you're working on and chat with you all about the awesome stuff that you guys are getting done. So yeah, we want to elevate what everyone's doing, and we kind of need your help to do that. So hopefully you guys will be excited to help us build this database to showcase all the cool stuff people are doing. All right, I'm going to hand off to Jenny for a quick discussion of Ecoflora.
Hi, everyone. For those of you unfamiliar with Ecoflora, we are a community science project that's seeking to understand more about the effects of urbanization, making biodiversity data available and accessible, and increasing understanding and appreciation of plant life. The Metro Phoenix Ecoflora is part of a nationwide program that was started by New York Botanical Garden and made possible by the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Locally, the project operates within Desert Botanical Garden and the Central Arizona Conservation Alliance. Using iNaturalist, a completely free and open source web-based platform and app, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, project members make observations, and we look at that data to understand more about biodiversity, specifically plant biodiversity in Metro Phoenix. In the past year, 167 people have joined the project, bringing the current total to 415. In year one, there were about 12,400 observations, and this past year in year two, we had 27,331 total observations, and about 14,881 of those were plants. So the total number of project observations to date is 40,732. So in the past 2 years since the project start, almost half of all observations in Metro Phoenix have come from this project. So just to put that into perspective, the total number of observations for all time, including from non-Ecoflora members, is about 165,000. So about a third of all observations in Metro Phoenix have come from Ecoflora. So if we take a look at this graph, which is observations in iNaturalist in Metro Phoenix for the past 5 years, the steady growth can be kind of attributed to, more people using iNaturalist in general. But I want to take a look at 2020 to 2021, and there's a considerable increase that you can see there. And that is the first full calendar year that Ecoflora has been up and running. So the project isn't all about data. We're a community of naturalists. We have collaborated with over 40 different community members, local experts, scientists, and organizations, the majority of which has been within this past year. So we hosted 30 events like our eco question sessions, birding, moth lighting, hiking, and a microscope lab with about 330 attendances. We presented for a variety of conferences and organizations, including the annual American Public Gardens Conference, the Arizona Native Plant Society annual botany meeting, and at Arizona State University. So what do all these numbers mean? Well, this ties back into fulfilling the goal of increasing awareness and appreciation of biodiversity and plant life. So all these numbers represent people that are interacting and learning, and these collaborations show how community science can be used and have an impact. So if you'd like to learn more about Ecoflora or the data we're collecting or to collaborate, you can find a link to our website in the chat. And I'll also put my email in there. You're welcome to email me. And that's it. I'd like to now introduce Kara Jensen and have her talk about Be Outdoors Arizona. Welcome, Kara.
Thank you very much. I am going to quickly share my screen. Oop. Okay, I want that screen. Okay. Be Outdoors Arizona has been around for about 10 years. I volunteered to one of their meetings like several years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And then they had decided, the board had decided they just weren't meeting anymore, and they wanted to see if they could find somebody to take the project over. And they reached out to a couple of organizations, state parks, and nobody really had the manpower or the funds to run it. And I currently I was doing the marketing, built the website, and created a Facebook page and started getting a lot of followers and working with a lot of the organizations like yours to put their events on the calendar. And when they came to me and said they were just going to shelve the project, I just said no. I had a lot of partners. I was getting a lot of traffic on the site and Facebook. I built it up to 10,000 followers. So a year and a half, 2 years ago, I took the whole organization over. So I've been running with it, adding more items to it. But basically, it's just getting kids outdoors, adults also, obviously. But I just did a Facebook or a website overhaul. It was been wanting to do that. A couple of people mentioned it needed a new look. So you can either pick from a couple event topics here or view all of the events here. I've got, again, there's thousands of events. We've got, I think I have 180 partners right now with their calendars on here. And anybody can enter an event. So down here, that would either be, that would be here, partner with us. So if you have events that you would like to enter, if you don't have a whole lot of them, then you can submit them this way, or we can import your calendar. The only thing with the import is that there'll be a little bit of a delay because it doesn't import all the information, such as, who you are, the exact location of where your event is, and it'll grab the time, the date. I'm feeling I'm in the middle of revamping this, so I might have a delay. I might not be able to get to this page. But you still can add a photo, you can add a lot of information, but if it's, some of the stuff might not show up. So we have that imported as a pending event. And then I have someone going in, checking all those, adding photos and adding whatever missing information. Adding the event is super simple. Getting to this page, your title, paragraph of what's going to happen at the event. You can put your date and time. You can also create an all-day event, but you can also create multiple events right here. So if it's a series or if it needs a different dates, you can just do it all on one page. Images, okay, there's something that's not showing up. The images do need to be around 600 pixels by 400. It looks better on the page. And here's another weird little glitch here I've got to figure out. But you do have categories. And it's going to run really slow. It'll list all the categories. So you can put in here, you put a primary category, let's just say it's camping, but then you can select other categories. And then if you want to put tags, you can do that. Venue, this is where you put in your venue. Now I have a whole bunch of them already in here. So once you start typing it, it may pop up. If it doesn't, it's easy to create a new venue. Just enter the information. And then again, event organizers. Most of you are probably in here, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's in here. I'm working on clearing some of this out. So you can find yourself, and if you're not in here, go ahead and enter it. You can just add another organizer. You also can put in your website if there's a special registration link, or if you just want to, I don't think you can put an email. If you have to register via email, put that up in the description. And then if you want to put an event cost, you can put that in, or if it's zero, if it's free. So that it's, and then this gets sent out. I don't know what this is. This is new. Everything's kind of got glitchy on me with the overhaul. And then you just hit submit, and then that'll go. I'll get an email saying there's a new event, and then I can add that in. I also have probably some of the same pages as CAZCA does, you know, with the parks and trails. I do have this, and this is from the Nat Geo, or the GIS, sorry, maps. So I have a lot of different things in here, a lot of things for school teachers or any kind of educators. I do have a lot of the educator type courses on there for educators. Those are also in there. So I have just about every event, if it involves being outdoors, learning something about the outdoors, it's in here. I'll leave it at that. And then if anybody has any questions that they want to know more about.
Thanks. So in terms of questions, just to keep to our schedule, if you all do want to ask Kara anything, would you mind, Kara, stop share screen?
There you go.
Thank you. So if you guys do want to ask questions, please feel free to do so in the chat. I'm going to keep us moving along, but obviously we are more than happy to make sure you stay connected with Kara and are able to use their amazing event calendar. This also, you know, this information will be in the recording. So if you want to reach out to her afterwards, I'm sure she'd be happy to stay in contact. And thank you so much, Kara. We really love the work you're doing. And this has been an event calendar of this scale, has been something that people have really been searching for a while. So it's great to see that you guys have something so comprehensive and easy to use available. Of course, CAZCA's always happy to share events, but we're just a little more limited in terms of our infrastructure and support. So we thought this was great. Thank you, Kara. All right, so we're actually going to move on to some working group updates from a few different folks. And we're going to get started with Anya Quiroz and John Bello. We have actually passed this particular working group on to the Arizona Association for Environmental Education, but we still really want to stay looped in with them. And we know that this is something that you all care about a lot. So we're going to hear back from Anya and John now about what they're working on. And Anya, please feel free to just let me know when to tab forward on the PowerPoint.
Well, hi, everybody. It's good to see familiar faces. John and I are still co-chairing this, as it started off with CAZCA this last year, actually right after the last all partner meeting. So we're very excited to give everyone an update of what's been going on. John is going to go ahead and kick it off with just a couple of slides. And John, if you need me to jump in at any moment, just let me know. But yeah, he'll go ahead and get us started with some history and context of who we are. And yeah, we'll move on for the updates on the working group after that. And you can go ahead and click to the next slide. There you go.
Hey everyone, it's nice to be here with you. I'm John. I am the education coordinator with Boyce Thompson Arboretum, and I am the co-chair with Anya on the education working group. And so recently we transitioned to partner with the Arizona Association for Environmental Education because they do a lot of work trying to promote environmental education within the state of Arizona. And we realized through working with all of our partners, as well as all of the different goals in the ROS, that it really made sense to align with a lot of what AAEE was already working on. So yeah, can you go to the next slide? So what is environmental education? And so this is one of the big things that we are currently working on, defining within the environmental literacy plan, which is one of the goals of the ROS. And so Arizona Association for Environmental Education has defined it as a process that helps individuals, communities, and organizations to learn more about the environment, develop skills and understanding about how to address global challenges. And especially going forward, this is really important to connect with K-12 educators, informal educators across the state. So yeah, so we're all in here to support environmental education, and we've created a community of educators that are very much interested in building this. So Anya, is this your slide now?
Sure. Well, let's go ahead. So thanks, John. And that's exactly why, John said it really well, where we knew eventually when I was still with CAZCA that AAEE would be a really great organization and a really great platform to not only finish the product, which we're one of the 20 states that hasn't finished the product, called an environmental literacy plan, but it would be a great platform to advocate for the plan. And so that transition happened just a little bit more quickly than we thought. But yeah, so we understand that there's a lot of synergy there. So we're really excited to be partnering as AAEE with CAZCA to continue this and move this forward. I wanted to share with everybody the strategic goals that we have in AAEE. And I think they resonate very well with what the foundation of the ROS is and some of the things that are called out for in some of the goals in the ROS. We really are trying to build a network, a community network that provides environmental education. That really is what CAZCA is all about, is having that network that provides not only educational resources, but just resources in general to deal with some of the conservation issues that we have. We want to demonstrate that we're culturally responsive practice and cultural humility. We want to teach best practices to all of our educators and the whole network that exists here. We want to inspire that collective advocacy to expand these programs through the organizations that we have here in the network. And of course, we want to elevate this profession and the legitimacy of environmental education across all sectors. I wanted to share this with you all just so that you know sort of where we're situated with all of this and why this is really important for us to continue with this environmental literacy plan and to continue with the partnership with CAZCA, because we feel like there's a lot of synergy happening between these different goals that we have. We can go ahead to the next slide. So just a tiny bit of history, and this might be a lot to read, but it's recorded. So if you want to come back to it, you can. But there's a lot of history in Arizona about trying to establish an environmental literacy plan. As you can see, it started all the way back when AAEE started. It was called something different then in the 1980s. We actually had an environmental literacy plan in 1992, which was repealed in 1994. And so we kind of are working from that foundation over the years with several stakeholder groups, several kind of attempts to restart this process. It's not an easy process. It requires a lot of work, a lot of expertise. So we're slowly moving from that. If you can go to the next slide. And so, as I said, there's been small developments that have happened over the years. We started another group in 2009. In 2012, we produced a white paper, which is available on the AAEE website. And then in 2015, a new environmental literacy working group was started. And since then, they've had several meetings, several iterations of coming together to start creating this project. And finally, in 2017, we started a draft of what would be hopefully our environmental literacy plan or environmental literacy strategy with recommendations from previous workshops and kind of gatherings around this topic. So if you can go ahead and click to the next slide. And so where are we now? In 2021, after the last All Partners meeting, we really reignited this effort. As John said, it is called out for in the ROS to champion an environmental literacy plan for the state of Arizona. We see why this is so important. Not only will it help us sort of give us a roadmap to what EE could be in the state, but it will also help serve, hopefully, as a mechanism for which environmental educators, formal, informal, and informal and non-formal, there's so many, to really kind of look to see what is my state doing, where are the resources that I need in order to provide these experiences to youth and actually learners of all ages. So that's what we're really trying to focus on and why we think this is really important. And so we've had a couple of meetings since the 2021 All Partners meeting. And we now have a really strong core group that is kind of working towards this effort. Here are some of the things that we're focusing on in that list that you see here. Things are still fluid, things are still in motion, but those are some of the primary things that you see in an environmental literacy plan across the nation, some of the things that are included. And so right now we wanted to give you all an update of where we are. We're really working forward, working with the 2017 draft in revising that and seeing where we are, and of course, adding more input and working off of that as a foundation for this work that we're going to be doing this year, which is really going to be diving into the plan itself, into what we had from 2017 and really working towards hopefully finishing an environmental literacy plan by the end of this year. It's really what we're trying to aim for. And then of course comes the advocacy piece of it, and that's kind of tangentially involved as we're moving ahead with some of the actual writing of it. So we're really excited. We really have a good foundation, a good base to work off of. But yeah, and I think maybe there's one more slide. Yes, so join us. So join us in our working group session later. It's going to be a little bit of a working meeting. We're going to be strategizing and obviously seeking input from anyone who's in that breakout group around the 5 main goals that are in the environmental literacy plan now. Those are still being noodled on and revised and looked at. So we would love more input from the group that's here today on what they think about these 5 goals. And yeah, so if anybody's interested in helping us out or even joining the working group, please go ahead and contact me or John, and we'll see you in the breakout group if you're interested. So thank you all so much. It's great to see familiar faces, and I'll see you all later today.
Thank you so much, Anya and John. If you guys wouldn't mind dropping your emails into the chat if people do want to join the group, I'm sure people will connect through the breakout session as well. But yes, because you both have new emails. So
yes, I'll put that in the chat.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, so we're actually going to transition now into our other working group. So Mary Fasigi and Willie Summers are here. I'm going to hand it off to them. And again, please let me know, guys, when you want me to tab forward through the PowerPoint slides.
Okay, thank you. Hey, Willie. So we've had a really exciting and busy and productive year. So we're excited to share what's been going on in the invasive species working group. And we should really redefine this right now. It's the invasive plant species working group. We haven't been working on animal issues. All right, next slide. So today we'll just give you a brief update on what's been happening in the CAZCA Goal 2 working group. And so we've been really working on the regional strategy piece that's called out in the ROS since the last 2021 All Partners meeting. And so we'll talk about the structure of our working group, what the regional strategy is that we've been putting together, what we accomplished in 2021, and where we're going from here. And Willie, feel free to jump in at any point. So the CAZCA Goal 2 invasive plant species working group was really formed to kind of think about collaboration. And so we've been working on the regional strategy goal, which is called out in Objective 2.6. And that actually lists management actions, it lists legislative actions and collaboration. And when we've been having our monthly meetings, we've really decided that the first place that we wanted to start this year was on building collaboration actions. So our strategy that we've developed, the idea is to focus on collaboration, and then those other pieces that are called out in the ROS could be built onto this strategy in the future. And luckily, we've had participation from many CAZCA partner organizations. We've had a great team, lots of really good discussions, and focusing on what we could accomplish together more in this year. And so from that, what's come out of our meetings is this focus on collaboration and our drafted regional strategy and 2022 action plan, which we'll talk about on the next slide. So first, I'll explain a bit about the structure of our regional strategy. We've had monthly meetings where we've gone over what the different areas that we think are important to address as a group together are. And as we started to have more meetings, we had some themes emerge on areas that we felt were really key to success of any regional effort to address invasive plant species threats. And these areas became our strategic focal areas. And so the first area that we called out is collaboration, and we had a specific definition of what we meant by collaboration here, which was to bring together the stakeholders of our group to share knowledge and resources to prioritize invasive plant species threats and assist the network in reaching common invasive plant species management goals, all while supporting individual organizations' invasive species management objectives. And then our second area is capacity building. And we define this as increasing our regional capacity to address invasive plant species threats in both protected and non-protective lands through shared mapping, resources, volunteer training, and information sharing. And then our third focus area became education and outreach, with a goal to increase public awareness and support for invasive plant species management, to elevate invasive plant issues and create regional support for removal and restoration activities across both public and private lands. So these focal areas are really big and they could be overwhelming without a specific pathway to action. So what we've done is we wanted to make sure that all the tactics that are listed within the strategy are bite-sized and actionable goals that we can achieve in 2022. Next slide. So this is a little look into the components of the strategy and our goals. If you're interested to learn more or to get involved in any of the work we're doing, we'll go deeper during our breakout sessions. We can go into the tactics then. But we have 4 overarching cross-cutting goals. And just like we had discussions that brought out the theme of our 3 kind of pillar focal areas, we started to have themes on goals. And we started with a longer set of goals and then kind of whittle them down to 4 that encompass all of the different areas that we think are key to work together in engagement and collaboration. And so our first goal is focused on the network itself, ensuring that knowledge, tools, and resources are shared across our practitioner network. So it's looking a little bit inward towards the CAZCA partnership itself and the members of the working group. Goal 2, engage with new sectors. So this one's looking outward. There are other folks who are really important to bring to the table related to invasive plant species issues. So we're talking about working more with developers, working more with HOAs, reaching out to municipalities that we haven't worked with much, et cetera, to increase removals, especially on non-preserved land. So many of the folks in our group are working on a particular parcel or a particular park or a preserve. And there's a lot of invasive plants that are in other spaces that we would like to get to. And actually I think that was goal 3 listed here. I have it on my list as goal 2, so I apologize. I was looking at the one that's listed number 3. So goal 2 is on here, and I'm up to my number 3, is increase our ability to map, remove, and monitor invasive plant species infestations in the Central Arizona region. This is really the work that Desert Defenders has been doing. It was called out multiple times during our meetings as obviously the key thing we need to do on the ground action in invasive plant removal. And then number 4 is focused on the public and education, inspiring people to become advocates and help educate others in the community about invasive plant species issues. So what have we accomplished so far? I'm really proud of what this team has done in a year. It's really impressive when I started to reflect back on how much we've accomplished. And I'm really looking forward to what we can do in this upcoming year. And so what we have accomplished so far, first off, in 1 year, we built up the working group. We got through our initial great discussions. We created our vision and our mission for the team. We have a 2022 action plan, which is really the tactics and the timeline for achieving what we have set out and outlined in the draft regional strategy. And so then we have the draft regional strategy itself. And I'm considering it still a draft at this point because there are some other folks that we really want to have look over it to make sure that this is what we want to do. And in particular, we want to reach out more to the Desert Defenders mapping team that came first and has been doing a lot of what is laid out in goal 3. So another thing that we did is we created a mapping committee. And this mapping committee works to target areas for both additional mapping and removal needs, and then also areas that would be important for us for education and outreach that we could then work together to focus on. And so that team brought together a map from the Desert Defenders team, from the IMAP invasives, and from the DFFM invasive species prioritization tool, and put it together. And so we have a working copy of that that's been helping guide what we want to do for this year. We also took a pilot field trip to the Cave Creek Regional Park burn scar area. And so Juanita Armstrong from Maricopa County Parks and Rec took us out to the site, walked along the trails last November, and we really learned about what the county has been doing for restoration initiatives, for post fire assessments, and we also got a chance to visit their native seed garden. And we got really positive feedback on that pilot field trip. So that will factor into what we plan for this upcoming year as well. And so if we go to the last slide here, where do we plan to go from here? So we have a plan now. There's still some work to be done on it. If you come to our breakout session, you can see why we're considering this still a working draft. We have the first half of the year mapped out in a timeline of what we want to do, but we still have some room for marking out what we want to do for the second half of the year. And so one of the major goals on Willie and my plate and Ariana and what we've been talking about is working to bring the strategy piece that the working group had done under the umbrella of Desert Defenders. And so this team was really focused on high-level strategic planning and identifying where we can do more to collaborate and engage, but that was strategic level. And so now that we're starting to move into implementation and we have our tactics lined up, we think it makes sense for these two teams to work together for implementation. And so we want to run by what we've put together through the draft strategy with the Desert Defenders leadership team, make sure that goal 2 and 3 and all the goals really, but especially goal 3 are encompassing all that Desert Defenders does, so that we can then use, I mean, this logo that we have for Desert Defenders is so great and can be used for initiatives for education and outreach, even more so than what has been done. And there has been a lot done already through that team. So we want to work with them to see if we can bring this under the same umbrella. We also have had feedback in our meetings that it would be great to collaborate and communicate more with other regional working groups that are focused on invasive plant management. So as an example, Willie just presented what our working group has been doing to the Lower Gila River Collaboration Restoration Working Group, very long name. I think they use an acronym. And so that was a really great way for us to start learning what other groups are doing, seeing ways that we can help each other and share information and go to similar education events and table. And so as I mentioned before, we had great feedback on our pilot field trip last November. So we'll be looking to organize several of these this year for the working group members, but also potentially targeting folks from different sectors and organizations to attend as well, depending on what the topic of the field trip is. We'll also be participating in education and outreach events. So that is something that we already have in the works, which I will talk about in a minute. And we've talked about organizing several joint pull days in the fall. We want to highlight and bring attention to a large group effort. So that's something that we have been talking about since at least late last year, that it would be great to have some focal days where we could bring the public out for some pull days at various parks. We've talked about a couple places in the city of Phoenix, potentially out by McDowell's, and we can consider other places as well to get engagement, and then also to remove species in important areas that need some work done. And we're running quickly through the year. We're already getting things started. Tomorrow, we will actually be tabling jointly at the Tres Rios Nature Festival, and that's in Avondale. And so we have folks from White Tank Mountain Conservancy, the McDowell Sonoran Conservancy, City of Phoenix, and DFFM as well. And so we'll be working together to talk about invasive plant species issues all under the CAZCA banner. And so that's one of the education and outreach events that we had highlighted late last year as something that we could get out to and get this is almost like a pilot, just like we had the field trip pilot, to see what kind of materials we would want to present to the public, what our call to action is. And it's a bit of a learning experience for this group as we try to start focusing more on engagement and outreach of the public. And so that's all I have for now. Willie, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't. As always, great job, Mary, with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys. Really grateful to all of you presenting and all of the hard work that you guys have done leading these working groups. We wouldn't be able to get any of this done without everybody. So thank you so much. And again, both of those working groups will have breakout discussion times at the end of the agenda today, so you can engage more with everybody there as well. All right, we are going to transition now into our collaborative conservation panel. So if you're a panelist, mentally prepare yourself. I'm going to hand off to Jenny in just a second. She'll be our moderator today. But I do just want to implore you all to think of questions about collaborative conservation as our panelists talk about their experience. All right, Jenny.
Hello again, everyone. So the panel is going to have two parts. In the first part, I'll introduce each panelist and invite them to speak about their experience in collaborative conservation one at a time. And then we'll move into a question and answer session. So like Ariana said, think about what you want to ask and please put your questions in the chat. We'll answer those first and remain muted as a courtesy to the panelists during their presentations. So now I'd like to welcome our panelists in alphabetical order by first name, and then we'll let them speak about themselves. Panelists, please aim to take no more than about 5 to 7 minutes each. A warm welcome and thanks to Candace Carr-Kelman from Arizona State University, Diane Russell from Socio-Ecological Strategies, Dylan Skybrook from the Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship Network, Nikki Rogers from the Arizona State Parks, and Patty Fenner from Friends of the Tonto. So up first, we'll hear from Candace Carr from Arizona State University.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thanks. So I'm Candace Carr-Kelman. I am an assistant research professor in the Center for Biodiversity Outcomes in the School of Life Sciences and also an assistant clinical professor in the School of Sustainability where I do teaching. And some research through that as well. I've been working for several years with Mike Schoon. Some of you might know Mike Schoon. He did some work on the wild horse issue recently, convening a moderating panel on that over a few years. And we've been studying collaborative governance. Next slide when you're ready. And so this is one of the projects that we've had going for years, asking what are the key elements of effective resource governance institutions. And this, we're trying to be very general, but this is essentially collaborative natural resource management, governance, and the institutions are the sets of rules that govern those. So we've started with a systematic review of the literature, pulling together some key core criteria of effective collaborative natural resource management. And then parallel with that, we did a bunch of case studies, both in Arizona and across the country. And then we also have been collecting case studies from others around the world. And we created a coding manual to collect data on these cases based on those key criteria that we found and any other contextual factors that we could come up with. And so it's a series of about 45 questions about the case, the context, and we've organized them into contextual variables, mechanism variables, and outcome variables. And now we're doing qualitative comparative analysis to attempt to see patterns of which things seem to be most correlated with effective resource governance institutions, which variables are present or absent in those successful cases. And these are some of the things that we found. Some of these are based on Lynn Ostrom's work, and you may be familiar with her design principles for long enduring resource management institutions. And so many of these are drawn from there, but they get repeated again and again in literature on resilience and even some sociology or political science interpretations or study of these institutions. And then it starts to branch out. And that's where you see these ones in blue: institutional adaptability, variety, flexibility, social learning, commitment, long-term commitment, shared vision and capacity building, leadership building, knowledge building, having prior networks, face-to-face dialogue, and then of course, trust and social capital is a really key component for making these collaborative types of projects work. So these are just some of the things that we ask questions about in our case study collection survey. And we're always collecting cases, so please feel free to ask more. I'd be happy to share our questions. We have it in a PDF format and also as a survey, we were using Qualtrics, and we just switched over to Airtable. So we have an intern actively switching us over right now. But that's how we've been storing and collecting our information. And we've got about 30 something cases now. And the idea is to get a lot more than that so that we can start to really see the common themes that will come out with a larger number of cases. So that's what we've been up to.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Next, we have Diane Russell from Socio-Ecological Strategies Incorporated.
Hi, everybody. I may have to jump off pretty quickly because my old dog is here and he's going to start barking and I don't have anybody to take care of him. I'm so sorry about that. You might hear him barking while I'm off mute. Next slide. So I think my background couldn't be more different from what you're doing. I work in a very data poor environment. I work with very poor indigenous and local communities in the Congo Basin, which is humid forest. And I do work in a situation of very unequal power relations between people who are doing conservation and local communities and the indigenous people. So I started my work in conservation and by the way, this is just a very personal view. I don't have any data to share with you, although, you know, there's plenty of resources I could provide if you're interested later. I started my work with a group of projects and indigenous peoples in Asia Pacific, at Philippines, Fiji, Solomon Islands. And it was, to me, it was very enlightening to work with these local communities and to see what motivated them to conserve. And a lot of it was around stewardship and pride in their territory, pride in their heritage. And that's something I've never forgotten. And I'm trying to bring that into my work now in Central Africa, where that notion of bringing in local people's history and stewardship and all of that has not really penetrated into the Central Africa context. So that's just a little bit of my background there on that slide. Next slide. Okay, so here's some lessons. This is a photo from this fantastic traditional chief that I met at a recent event in Eastern Congo, where we brought indigenous and local communities together to develop a project because we wanted to base it on their needs, their wishes, their understanding of conservation, which is, as I said, this is a new thing in the Congo Basin because conservation has been very top down, very militarized, even because of the threats. Here are a couple of things I've learned. One is indigenous peoples and local communities want direct support. They really don't want to be supported through NGOs, the international NGOs, or even regional NGOs. They want their resources to go to them directly. Their rights and their territorial integrity are at the center of what they need and want. At least in my sphere of influence, the expertise and interest in genuine social science is lacking. It remains lacking from the 25 years of work that I've done in conservation, and Candace might be able to weigh in on that one because she and I have worked on some of these efforts together. What I mean by genuine social science is people really listening and learning from local people, not, you know, doing data collection, harvesting surveys and things like that. So the need to really focus on listening and learning. And then one of the things that motivates me now is the need to return to sort of a holistic rural development strategy, and not because we're so sectorized, at least in the donor world that I live in. You know, okay, our project is about reducing deforestation, but what does that mean to local people who don't have water or they don't have food, or, you know, and if we're so narrowly focused on our conservation sector issue, we're going to miss the opportunity to engage more broadly. The ecosystem services are so important. We're very species oriented in Central Africa, you know, mountain gorillas, bonobos, all of that. And we forget the Congo Basin, it's about ecosystem services. And then the importance of it, again, integrating history and culture into the conservation efforts and really making it meaningful to people about their territory and their lives. Thank you. I'm going to mute so you won't hear him bark now.
Thank you so much, Diane. Next, we have Dylan Skybrook from the Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship Network.
Hi, everybody. Glad to talk to you today. Yeah, I'm Dylan Skybrook. I manage the Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship Network, which is a network of 24 organizations on the central coast of California. All the organizations who are members of the network either own or manage or in some way steward land in the Santa Cruz Mountains region. It's a really beautiful region, redwood forests, cliffs over the ocean, grasslands, and so on. And it's a biodiversity hotspot. And unlike some other areas where maybe one agency might own several 100,000 acres or something like that, in this region, every 4,000 or 5,000 acres is owned by someone else. And so all their properties are right next to each other in a patchwork quilt of ownership. So it really makes sense for them to work together. We work together on issues around climate change and fire because it's California, forest health, a lot of public access issues, trails and that kind of thing, habitat preservation and so on. It's about 1 million acre area that our member organizations cover. And sometimes people think that we might come up with a single plan for the region because we have kind of all the major players in the network, but that really doesn't make sense. For us, one of the things about our network is we have a real diversity of stewardship types. We have public agencies, local, state, federal. We have land trusts. We have the Amamutsan tribe. We have several timber companies. We have some water utilities. There are universities, Stanford, UCSC, Cal Poly. So a lot of different kinds of organizations doing different kinds of things on the land. So instead, we have an emergent process in which we come together in conversation. We discover what we might want to do together. And then different clusters of network members gather around different issues. And then we figure out, which of those we can bring forward and find the capacity, to create projects and that kind of thing. So no single plan, and we don't all have to agree on everything that we do. And we can get a lot done that way without having to agree on absolutely everything. Not that there's a lot of conflict necessarily, just more that there are some issues that people want to bring time and resources to, certain members want to bring time and resources to, and then other members want to bring time and resources to other issues. So it's kind of complex purpose that's driving us forward. Right now, we have teams that are working on trails, on climate change adaptation. We have a team working on thinking about whether we could collaborate on shuttles to get people out to the parks and open spaces and that kind of thing. We have a very giant vegetation mapping project happening. It's a several $1 million project. We got planes in the air to get high quality LiDAR and high resolution imagery and that kind of thing. Because we are doing so many different kinds of projects, as someone else just mentioned, we work a lot on building relationships. We spend a lot of time making sure people know each other and get to know each other even a bit beyond what might be professional capacity, so that they feel that they can trust one another, especially as we're doing more complex projects that might require more money and more resources from each of the individual member organizations. We've been around for about 7 years. I'm the only staff person. And we've done quite a bit during that time. There's quite a nice feeling in the network. People really want the region to thrive and they want to work together. So that's the network, and happy to answer any other questions during the Q&A period. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dylan. Next, we have Nikki Rogers from Arizona State Parks.
Thank you. I'm Nikki Rogers. I'm the Chief of Grants and Trails for Arizona State Parks. And our mission is to manage and conserve Arizona's natural, cultural, and recreational resources for the benefit of the people, both in our parks and through our partners. Currently, we manage our grant program. We have 6 different funding sources with 15 different funding opportunities and have $28 million to administer in FY22. These grants are all related to outdoor recreation, to include trail construction, and their associated infrastructure, both motorized and non-motorized trails. We provide grants to outdoor recreation facilities such as community parks, ball fields, courts, pools, splash pads, dog parks, picnic facilities, walking paths, and infrastructure related to these facilities. We also have grants for outdoor environmental education. We assist law enforcement agencies with funding for education and enforcement related to OHV use, funds to preserve historic sites, and funds related to bodies of water that allow motorized use. These grants are available to state, county, federal, tribes, and nonprofits. As far as collaboration, we are required to have a policy and procedures in place to administer these grants. First, we develop statewide plans to guide priorities for this funding. This is a public process that involves several public meetings, focus groups, land managers involvement, and filing requests on public input prior to finalizing these plans. We have 2 major statewide plans, a 5-year statewide trails plan, which sets priorities for funding our trails, and a statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which sets priorities for funding our outdoor recreation programs. And currently this one is open, so anybody that wants to provide input on our statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, that's available on our website. You can look at it and provide some input on that. I'll put that link in the chat when we're done. So also in collaboration, we have 4 advisory committees that advise the Parks Board on all of our grants that are funded. Members of the public serve 3-year terms on these committees, and all these meetings are open to the public where they can speak on a project, any project that's being reviewed. As far as conservation, all of our grants are required to go through environmental review and cultural review prior to being awarded. So our grant process certainly is a collaborative effort that encourages the public to participate in all of these processes. As far as our section, there's 3 of us that are currently working with 15 different working groups, both regionally and statewide, related to conservation and outdoor recreation. We work with our federal partners, BLM and U.S. Forest Service being involved in the travel management plans. We work with our state partners, Game and Fish and State Lands, to talk ongoing issues and solutions to those issues related to outdoor recreation. And we work with our federal agencies, Federal Highway and National Park Service, who provide funds for our programs. So that's basically what we do, and I'd be happy to answer any questions when we get to that section.
Great, thank you so much, Mickey. Up next, we have Patty Fenner.
I'll just introduce myself. I'm Patty Fenner. I worked for the Tono National Forest for about 33 years and retired in 2014. And now I work with this nonprofit Friends of the Tonto, who cooperates with the Forest Service to do projects where the forest can't quite do their projects due to funding or staffing lack. The next slide shows kind of the problems with nonprofits. A lot of people start them, such as we did. Oh, could we back up? And the next part to this is to start, press any key, and then he's saying, where's the any key? Is you don't know stuff and you don't know what you don't know. And that's starting a nonprofit. A lot of people are in that boat that they don't know who to ask. So partnerships are really important for that reason. You have people to ask. And the next slide shows how we got a lot of help when we got started. Friends of the Awafria National Monument helped us out with being a fiduciary sponsor, so we could act as a nonprofit even though we didn't have that status quite yet. Trail, the 4-wheel drive group, helped us with mapping strategies, and they know a lot about that because they map a lot of roads and trails for the Tonto. The McDowell Sonoran Conservancy, we've worked with them quite a bit on invasive plant management. So we're partners in that field. Sedona Friends of the Forest is an amazing group. They built a whole visitor center for the Forest Service up north, and it's both inspiring and depressing to go to their meetings. Forest Partners in Payson is a defunct group, but we worked with them for a while. They were helping out the Forest Service on that one ranger district. And then there's larger groups, the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits, which has a lot of resources for nonprofits to learn and to help them get started. We used your part-time controller to help us with our strategic plan. And then we just recently found out about a website called Catch a Fire, where there's advisors that are very knowledgeable in nonprofit issues and how to do things, and they'll help you for free. And then some unexpected places like Literacy Volunteers of Maricopa County. I serve on their board also, and I just learned from them on how to conduct meetings and have a really good, they have an excellent executive director. So they just serve as an example for how to really be a good organization. Okay, next slide. We called it cross-pollinating. That's what we did with the Forest Partners in Payson. We served on each other's boards, and it really helped both of our organizations because we both grew from that experience. That's where I learned the 4 stages of nonprofit is forming, storming, norming, and performing. And I'd never heard that before, but it kind of fits. So we learned from each other's meetings. And then we also collaborate with other entities on projects to have a bigger impact, like CAZCA is very important. And we have a representative who regularly goes to their meetings. And other Southwest Vegetation Management Association is a statewide weed group that we can learn a lot from. We are part of the Monarch Joint Venture. We plant milkweed every year, and we learn a lot from them on how to do monitoring and different aspects of monarch habitat improvement. And then also the cross-pollinating part has to do with links on websites. We've learned that if you both link to each other's website, it builds visitation and you get more hits. So that's part of the cross-pollinating vigor building of partnerships. Okay, next slide. Then there's also corporate partners. There's ones where people can do pain-free giving, we call it. If people sign up through Smile Amazon, you can donate your favorite charity, which we're on the list for, and a part of your purchases will go to that organization. Anybody who has a Fry's VIP card can donate to a designated charity, which we're on the list for, and any nonprofit can get on their list. And then places like Home Depot, you can get donations from. Then there's places like Boeing and Intel. Well, Boeing, they donate money for volunteer hours that their employees give. So that's become very important for us. Intel has a program where they sponsor their employees to take some time off and work with a nonprofit. GE donates money to match their employees or retirees' donations to nonprofits. And then SRP has a wonderful volunteer program. They have a volunteer coordinator, and they also have gifts of money that they'll give you. And then REI has a lot of similar interests, and their clientele, their interests overlap with what we do quite a bit. So we have started working with them some. So those are just some of the things that we've learned as a new nonprofit. And I think that's it for us. Thank you. Oh, one more slide, sorry. This is an example of a project we did that was very complicated. It started out, Arizona Wilderness Coalition, which is now called Arizona or Wild Arizona. They asked us for a place where they could do invasive plant control in a riparian area. So we naturally thought of Arnett Creek, which is a beautiful little riparian area near Superior. One second. Has a salt cedar problem and an oleander problem. And Wilderness Coalition put together this group of 9 partners, and it was very complicated, but each partner had their role to play. And Brian Stoltz, the head of the project, it was like a choreographed dance. He had everybody do their little part, and it was an amazing partnership. So that's an example of what a lot of partners can do. He had horse packers, student groups, people who helped with herbicide recommendations. That's what we did, and monitoring. So this is an example of a project that a lot of partners can get together and do. Okay, I think I'm done now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we don't have any questions in the chat just yet, but if you think of some, feel free to pop them in there. This will be kind of an open Q&A, so whoever would like to answer, please feel free. So first question, in the case of Maricopa County, what role do you think collaboration can and should play in conservation efforts? Do you have any takers for that one?
Well, I could jump in there.
Sure. Thanks, Patty.
Okay. Well, in the county, there's such a mishmash of land ownership. There's county, municipal, there's federal lands, there's state lands, BLM, Forest Service. And so especially we do a lot of invasive plant work. And if you only work on a certain one land ownership, you're very, very limiting, where weeds move across boundaries very easily. So especially with weeds and probably other things too, you need to work with other neighboring people to have a big impact.
I've got a comment in the chat, tribal lands also. Thank you, Patty. We do have one question. Are there characteristics of successful versus unsuccessful collaborations?
This is Nikki. I think I can talk. What we found out is it's best to have somebody that can facilitate these collaborative efforts. If they're not facilitated, they tend to get sidetracked very easily. So one of the things that is key to these collaborative efforts is to have it facilitated.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And also relationships are really important. Not just, professional relationships and trust, as someone mentioned earlier, but you need to be able to get along with other people and not have egos get in the way.
We have any
I'll second that. I'll second that. The importance of trust. I think there are some studies that showed that this sustainability of protected areas was linked to trust with surrounding communities. And study was done by a professor in Vermont, and he looked across, he looked across different protected areas. Trust and listening and respect of the different partners.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say that in our network, we have some folks who in the past, before the network formed, were actually enemies. We have logging companies, and we have some land trusts whose whole point was to protect redwoods. And all the things that people are saying about trust and respect and listening are exactly right and super important. And I just want to add also just making sure that people even have the chance to just become familiar with each other. That basic level of relationship where people get to know each other and have food together, things that we might take for granted, but are really powerful some of the members of our network went from being essentially enemies to doing very complicated land swaps and really working together, helping protect redwoods in various ways. So just that kind of thing can be really helpful in successful collaboration.
Diane, we have a question. Sorry.
Oh, no, just let me just add that I think understanding the different partners or stakeholders' incentive structures is also really important. At USAID, we do a lot of work with the private sector, and there's sometimes, sort of mythologies about the private sector and, the benevolence and, and their incentive, they have to make a profit in a market, and understanding that and being realistic about it and planning for that and, really, so that everybody, there are no surprises in the partnership. I'm going to have to log off in just a minute. So thank you so much for having me on the panel.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. Before you jump off, we have a question actually specifically for you, if you don't mind. How can what you learned from your work in Southeast Asia and Congo be applied to the conservation community here in Central Arizona?
Yeah, so I wrote down some ideas on that based on the questions that you sent around. I think understanding incentives and power differentials is really important, and facing those upfront, being very proactive about those, not waiting until a conflict comes up, but teasing those out at the beginning. Let me see. People have to see their own interests reflected, and I think in the case of the redwoods, that certainly was the case. That you have to, you're going to give and get, and you need to have. When I work with indigenous peoples in the Congo, they're not getting much of anything out of conservation, and in order for them to be genuine partners and collaborators, they have to see their interests met in a respectful way. Not all of their interests necessarily, but important things that are important to them. And then again, I'll just stress, as an anthropologist to work in conservation for 25 years, the lack of expertise in genuine social science, I think is a serious issue, at least in international conservation. And when you bring in people who really understand local communities and can dialogue with them, it can make a huge difference. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Bye from us.
Yeah, I would definitely second what Diane said about learning from those developing world contexts, that it's especially important to include marginalized voices of any type, whatever marginalized voice is present in it as a stakeholder in the region is important to consider. And they may not be obvious at first, but at least to be invited to have a seat at a collaboration table can make a huge difference. And even if they don't accept, it may make a difference later just to have been invited and considered. But there are great examples of collaborative management of parks. I mean, I'm thinking of one from my dissertation research in Indonesia where it ended up being an indigenous group that had formed their own board and helps to co-manage Cayenne Mentorong National Park in the heart of Borneo. And it wouldn't have been possible without the advocacy of World Wildlife Fund and an anthropologist who dedicated her life to that communication that Diane is talking about, and making sure that there's a linkage and a bridge between the people who are on the ground all the time and the government that is, far away in the capital, and making sure that those voices are represented. Having those marginalized voices, we don't tend to think of ourselves as living in a colonial environment, but the entire US was colonized, and we have to make sure that we are including the original owners and other folks that have been marginalized in the process of colonizing this land.
Yeah, and Candace, in talking about, you know, the invitation, you know, a lot of times these relationships are much more difficult than just reaching out and saying, hi, come join us. You know, so that initial invitation is a great first step. Do you have any advice beyond that? Because a lot of times when we have those invitations, there's silence and we don't get responses. So to you and the rest of the panelists, do you have advice for kind of getting past those silences or, you know, those kind of barriers?
Well, you know, somebody else mentioned this, and I think it's right on, you know, that the boundary spanning, I think they called it networking, relationship building, you know, making an effort to bring people together. And it could be just like a repeated extension of the invitation to join, or a visit of some kind, whatever, you know, makes sense from a, you know, from a social perspective, whatever is the reasonable thing. But I do think that if we don't do that, then it's just continuing, you know, the status quo that has been the case of excluding those marginalized voices for so long. And you know, it may not be easy to continue reaching out, but sometimes that's what's needed, especially if they don't really have the bandwidth to add another voluntary thing into their lives when they may be struggling economically. It's still important. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Dylan, what you mentioned earlier, building relationships, and I think that's been repeated also, is it's not just, you know, a one way. We need to build those relationships with folks, and that takes time. We have another question. Across the participants, are there particular issues right now that seem ripe for collaboration, things that organizations really want to collaborate on?
So this is Mickey. So we administer the off-highway vehicle program, and the off-highway vehicle use has exploded since the pandemic. So there's major issues in some of the Sedona area out west. So there needs to be some sort of to get a group together to address some of the issues related to outdoor off-highway vehicle issues. So that's what we're starting to do now, because we've heard from several people issues with the off-highway vehicle use.
Okay, I think that's increasingly so, as Maricopa especially is growing pretty rapidly. Dylan or Patty, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I mean, for us, we collaborate at different levels on so many things. So sometimes our collaboration is taking the form of really information sharing and making sure that, you know, there's kind of a fabric of information that's crossing the region. And sometimes we're doing projects together as a network. And sometimes the network members are self-organizing collaborative project based on the relationships that they've built within the network. And so recently, you know, we had, you know, there's been so much fire, so much wildfire in California. And in our region in 2020, we had a 90,000 acre fire that burned California's oldest state park, including a lot of old growth redwoods and a lot of other lands for our network members. And so we've done a ton of collaborating around fire. A lot of that has just been simply information sharing around funding or around practices, some really practical things like what are people doing to repair roads after the culverts melt and that kind of thing. And sometimes it's multiple network members getting together to do restoration projects and that kind of stuff. I mentioned earlier that we've got a team going right now around exploring shuttles in the region, both as a strategy around equity to make sure more people can get out to parks and open space, and also to, you know, reduce cars and carbon emissions and that kind of thing. And so that, it's funny, that one, because I would not have necessarily a year ago guessed that that's what we would have collaborated on. But with all the things that are up at the moment, that's just become a thing that's really important. But I guess, you know, just to the point I was trying to make starting out is that we have worked together enough at this point that there's this kind of ongoing multiple pointed way in which we're either sharing information, working together at multiple things, that almost everything that all these folks are working on are things that we're working on together.
Thank you. Patty?
Yeah, I would agree with Dylan on the fire thing. That's become such a big issue in the West and in Arizona and central Arizona. It's tied so much to invasive plants. So the invasive plant issue has been ongoing for quite a few years now. And we've got a member who's extremely active with your group and in our group with dealing with invasive plants. And so that's an ongoing thing that we can cooperate with others on. And also a big issue lately is monarch butterflies. Their populations took a huge dive last year, so much that they could have been endangered, but then they bounced back last year. But come to find out, when we do public information about, we do little sessions on the public for education, the fourth graders, they all know about monarch butterflies. They teach that in school. And so it's becoming more common knowledge with people. They teach their parents when they come home, and it's a big issue lately.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a very great interest in pollinators and also wildfires, Dylan, like you mentioned. So one more quick question. In your opinion, what is the #1 factor for success in collaborative conservation? I know it's a tough one.
Well, I think it takes time to work on these things, to look around and find out who's doing what, and it takes time to build relationships. So time is always limiting for a lot of people, and that's a very important factor.
I would say that having what I would call an interconnected worldview is the most important factor, because what tends to happen is that when organizations have goals, they really focus on those goals. But to be able to see the larger context that whatever work they're doing exists within. So with land, it's a little bit easier because you can see the larger landscape. You can see how whatever work you're doing is connected to that larger landscape. But for any network, any collaborative effort, kind of seeing how whatever work you're doing fits into a bigger picture, I think allows you then to want to work with other people whose work will, dovetail with yours or affect yours in some way. And if you don't have that ability, there's not really any way to collaborate well, because maybe whatever anyone else is doing doesn't really, seem pertinent to you. So I think for all of us, I think one of the best collaborative skills that we can develop is to see systemically and to see the bigger picture.
Yeah, great answers both. Candace, do you have any additions?
Well, I really hope that we will have an answer to this from research pretty soon. I'm actually dropping the link to our survey in the chat if anyone wants to take it and add a case study, because as we get larger numbers of case studies, we can run these qualitative, the QCA analysis, comparative analysis, which is a quantitative way to do qualitative research. It's kind of a strange thing, but it basically is like sorting. It's a way of sorting like things into Venn diagrams. And when we have a lot of cases, we'll be able to hopefully see, what they point to in terms of, what seems to really be the key, which seem to be the key variables based on how people report these cases. And of course, there is an amount of subjectivity involved there, which is why the large numbers are really going to be important there. But I would definitely say that so far, from just looking across the cases, some of the key ones that pop up are definitely trust and social capital, but also long-term commitment and common vision, which are the ones that have been mentioned thus far as well. I think having those diverse, the diversity of actors, like Dylan was talking about, having the logging companies, having the environmentalists sit down and get to know each other. It really helps if they're working toward a common goal, right? If they have that common vision of what they are working towards, and if they can agree on something, then it's easier to put the other things that they don't agree on aside, to work together and kind of work together as people and see each other as people, as well as, you know, looking at it as a collaborative project.
Great, thank you so much. And we do have a comment in the chat. Don't give up. That's a great point, Les. Thank you. Thank you so much to our panelists. We're at time now. We appreciate you being with us today and for your very thoughtful and wonderful answers. And I'll hand it over to Ariana.
Thank you so much to all of you panelists. That was an awesome discussion. I was taking notes. I love all the different perspectives that you guys brought to the table. Okay, so we are actually going to take a bit of a break here. I would love for us to all come back at 11:05, so a little bit more than 10 minutes. And after that, we will have some time for the Jamboard, and then we'll be doing breakout groups. So the rest of our agenda today is going to be, you know, very hands-on. And so yeah, let's take a break. So we just want to spend a couple of quick minutes before the end of today doing some report outs so people can kind of get a sense for, you know, what everyone talked about. Obviously, we couldn't be in all the rooms at once. So what I'm going to do is go down the list and ask to hear 2 or 3 points, main takeaways from each of the groups. And I'm going to start with the habitat connectivity group. Eileen, do you have any main takeaways for everyone to hear from our conversation?
Sure. So, hi everyone, Eileen Baden, Park and Open Space Planner, Maricopa County Parks. So yes, Juanita brought up a really good point. So what will happen if we don't connect? What will happen if we don't connect our parks and our other places? So the concern is that loss of genetic diversity. And then also what came up is that we went over the public outreach as well as the other outreach that Maricopa County has done for the Parks Vision 2030 project. We did outreach with an executive team, which is high-level stakeholders in Maricopa County, staff, stakeholders, so over 60 organizations from across the region, and also with the public. And wildlife corridors have come to the top of what needs to be protected, as well as many other things such as open space and things like that. But what we really came up with is that we need some innovative planning, and we need it to really attack some of these challenges holistically, and how can we work together to, you know, not work in silos. And so really what I wanted the group to take away too was that Maricopa County is working on the Parks Vision Plan. If there are any high-level goals that you think would be important to incorporate in the plan, I've had a few folks reach out to me about farmland preservation. Deborah Tosling was talking about some of the great low impact development and other things like that. And I know we already have some of that stuff planned, but if you have other ideas for what we should include as goals, please do reach out to me and I'll put my information in the chat. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Eileen. And thanks to the whole group that helped lead that. It was a great conversation. All right, how about if we hear from the invasive species group, Mary or Willie, or I don't know if you guys picked someone else to report back.
Yeah, I volunteered to report out for our group, and yeah, we had some really good discussion about a number of different topics, but if I was to try to synthesize it, I would say we talked about public education and outreach, and just some different approaches for how to get the public informed, how to get them involved, like through volunteerism, and also thinking about, like someone brought up, what's in it for me as a homeowner, landowner, you know, with invasive plant management. Like, why is it important to remove invasive plants, even from your own yard, and what can you replace them with? We also talked about mapping, just a mapping for some of the on-the-ground managers of natural areas. That mapping is so critical, and volunteers can help with that, but you have to know where your invasive plants are throughout your landscape in order to manage them and monitor them. So mapping is really important, and tools like field maps can be helpful to get in the hands of willing volunteers to contribute towards you know, the data, the on-the-ground data. We also talked about some important areas and ways to engage volunteers. So like the concept of adopt a park, where an organization can go out to a public park and really lean in with volunteers and do some good things, planting native plants and controlling non-native plants. And we also talked about the importance of HOAs and especially their natural area open space and NAOS areas, where there can be a lot of invasive plants and where these areas can feed into public lands. So that's something our working group has really honed in on is coordinating with HOAs and assisting them if they need assistance. And then lastly, one of our participants just brought up the reality, just the enormity of the task. When you look at some of the maps of invasive plants and the spread around Maricopa County, it is an enormous task and pretty daunting. But each area has volunteers and has groups where they really focus on their own backyards. But fortunately, the groups like this, we can talk to each other and share successes and learn from one another. So in a nutshell, we had a lot of good conversations, and those are some of the high points.
Thank you. That was great. And so lastly, before we go and talk a little bit about the Jamboard, we want to check in with Anya and John on the environmental education.
Hey everybody, again, we had a really great discussion. We got some good input on the direction that where we're going. So we shared with the people in our breakout group the 5 overarching kind of goals for the environmental literacy plan. And then we dived in a little bit into the 6 strategies that we have. So how are these strategies working up towards these goals? And these goals that we are currently working on and revising and looking at are actually from the original 1992 document. So again, older statements and things have changed. So we're really looking to revitalize those and ensure that they're still aligning with the priorities that we have. So we had some good comments in general about what is environmental education and how can these goals work to ensure that we include learners of all ages, that this isn't just tied to formal education, but that they ensure that we include the large portion of education that happens, like everybody here is very familiar with, these other informal, non-formal outdoor learning experiences that we have. So we had some good conversation around that. And then we also moving into the strategy. So how are we going to achieve these goals? We had some great discussion around how to perhaps make these overarching strategies a little bit more actionable. One of the, as I shared with the working group, the breakout group, we've had a lot of challenges when it comes to the environmental literacy plan because of the climate that we're in politically, where it's hard to garner support for the plan, and it's hard to get those champions to really try to push this forward to the levels that we need it to. And since the 1992 plan, we've had a lot of difficulties in just sort of revitalizing this plan. And I think we kind of hit something there where perhaps making some of these strategies and some of these goals a little bit more actionable, kind of just bring things down a little bit. It might be a good direction to go to, or something to explore, at least with the working group as well. So some really good ideas about how to move forward on some of these things in general. So yeah, we're very excited. We're really grateful for the advice. And if anybody else didn't have a chance to go to the working group, but is a little bit interested in this work that we're doing, I will put my information in the chat again. If you're interested in doing work with us or in, just kind of joining the group in general. But yeah, thank you everybody who participated.
Thank you so much, Anya, and thank you everybody. This has been really amazing. We're about done. The last thing I wanted to do is just give you guys a little bit of an idea for what we got out of the Jamboard so far. Terry went through and picked out some feedback, and I think it's really interesting. So for the first question, in terms of focus areas, people have talked a lot about invasive species management, watersheds, wildlife and wildlife corridors, recreation, with overarching goals of education, collaboration, and management. And I think that fits in really well with our conversations today, as well as the Ross. And some ideas for how CAZCA can help. And I think this is inclusive of the backbone staff, but also the Alliance. because, you know, CAZCA staff is quite small. But some things that we can maybe collaborate around include training and materials, finding and engaging volunteers, IDing the most effective species for restoration, incentive for partners to interact, shared increased publicity, and outreach platforms, connecting with tribes, and helping with social media and creating branded flyers together. So lots of really good ideas. And as I mentioned before, the Jamboard will be open not only for your increased feedback, but so everyone can take a peek on at what the different ideas are, because I think this could be relevant to all of us. So I want to thank everyone so much for participating today. I know it was a bit of a whirlwind and we couldn't really hit on everything CAZCA is doing, everything that, you know, the Alliance is doing. There's just so much going on the ground, but I hope that you all got a good digest of some really cool things that are happening in the region and who you can connect with to help out or, you know, get more information. So thank you so much to everybody. This was really exciting and we will be in touch.